Hey everybody, welcome to Common Censor. This is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other stuff.
And this is our 7th intro, because we can't seem to get this shit right. But hopefully this is the one that takes.
This is supposed to be, like the magic of audio or film, where they don't actually know how many takes it's been. And you're not supposed to tell them. It's like the cook serving up food and being like, oh, I dropped the chicken in the kitchen, but it's okay because you didn't see it. You can't tell people.
They could hear it in our tone that this wasn't the first time. They could tell.
I don't know. I think
just like with the chicken, you're like, the chicken's a little gritty, I feel like.
I don't know. I think you can sound tired of life and it just being, the day.
I don't know if that's any better, but all right. We've got a hell of a show for you, whether we can get this thing started or not. And my name is Lee Camp. I'm joined by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello.
So tons of stuff to talk about. We thought we'd switch it up this week. We normally, well, not normally, but on the weeks when we do kind of a more philosophical topic, we usually save it for the end. But we figured let's start off with it. And granted, these are often philosophical political questions, which this one definitely is. So take it away.
To be philosophical for a moment, Lee, everything is political. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
I mean, if you philosophically are deciding whether gardening has a lot of meaning in your life, I don't know if that's that political.
Yeah, but how do you have access to gardening? Where do you live? Why do you live there? Do you have access to urban farming or urban gardening?
You can draw things out to their political discussion.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Ergo, Latin, everything is political.
You think you're so smart because you got a Latin word.
Funny story. My band opened for Tom Morello a couple of times. And after one of those shows, we were hanging out and and my guitarist always hated that I used the word ergo. He fucking hated it. And I'm not really sure why, but it really irritated him. So that, of course, meant that I used it more often.
Did you always yell Latin afterwards?
No, that's from Archer.
That's a newer advent.
Yeah, Archer taught me to yell Latin after I say ergo. But so we're and of course Tom Morello, for those who don't know, is fucking brilliant. He graduated, Harvard or Yale? I can't remember which one. But anyway,
Tom Morello, for those of you who really don't know, he was in Rage Against the Machine, and then he had a solo career.
So brilliant guitarist, brilliant person, and we're sitting there afterwards and we're having like a political conversation, and I just dropped an ergo in there, and then Tom looks at my guitarist and then back at me. He's like, "Did I just get ergoed?" And I was like, "What is it with people in that word? I don't understand. I just like the word."
And then he went out the door.
Anyway, that's not the point of this story.
No.
So the philosophical topic that I thought of, which was really inspired by some folks, posting things or even, reaching out to me to catch up and things like that, is people are feeling now that the pandemic is in its, 400th month, that people...
it started when I was 12. So you can extrapolate from there. Exactly.
I actually think you can draw a direct transition from the Black Death to COVID. So people are now feeling, some people are feeling that they're lacking a purpose, because we're brought up, and not just in the United States, but in a lot of quote unquote industrialized nations, to frame our life around our job, even if that's a job that we hate, or, quote unquote adulting, like, getting married and having kids and having that structured lifestyle, which is really so fragile, as we've seen. And then recognizing that because of the machinations of capitalism, and this is rather American, the idea of being isolated, separated from your community, and very individualistic. And because the pandemic is, ripping people from the idea that we've been programmed to the ideas that we've been programmed to chase after, that lack of community seems even more glaring. And so people are wondering, okay, well, what's the purpose if it's not the job that I had, or if it's not the house that I was that I bought? And
right. Well, I feel like this has ripped the facade off the false promises of American society. That promise was, we will give you quote unquote freedom and protection as long as you give up that freedom to work at a job you hate. Right. That was one of the main promises of American society, but it can't deliver that anymore, even if it did for many for a while. And also it was like, we will create a society where if you work at a job you hate, you will be able to get these false happiness things, these products. You will be able to go shopping once a week. You will be able to, for clothes, you will be able to buy shiny things, and that will give you purpose. Now, it wasn't a real purpose. It was a distraction from the fact that you don't have purpose. But now people can't even afford the distraction. The distraction is unattainable for most people now.
Well, and I like how you put that, the distraction from the fact that you lack purpose. But I guess like then for me as a philosophy nerd, and I'm particularly fond of existentialism, which kind of like the cornerstone of existentialism is the idea that life is meaningless, which folks might recognize that from nihilism. But where it kicks nihilism right in the balls is, well, then get some meaning, like apply some meaning. Like, that is your power. Right. That is your privilege. That is your, responsibility. And Albert Camus famously ultimately said that the only truly philosophical question is whether you or not you want to live. And once you've decided that you want to live, then you've already decided that your life has meaning. Then the details are what you get to decide really every day.
Yeah, and that is the true freedom, is to decide what is that purpose in your life. However, as you and I well know, and in fact, that's where I think a lot of libertarians or some of these, shitty right-wingers would leave it. They'd say, you have this freedom. You get to decide every day whether you like your job or not, and if you don't, fucking quit. Whereas you and I say, you get to decide every day what your purpose is in this life. But so many people are crushed down by economic force and forced to do things they hate and forced to live in ways they don't want to live. And that is a form of slavery, a form of persecution. So even though we start off that, philosophical view of life similarly, in these two cases, one of them acts like economic force, and the forces of our society, our late stage capitalism society, don't exist. Like, we're just let's not even discuss it, because people just get to choose every job they want. That's the end of the discussion.
Right, of course. And I've had this conversation with folks before that say, like, oh, well, isn't it nice that you get to like apply meaning to your life, and that sounds so froofy and privileged. And it's like, well, that's assuming that your meaning in life is only something that can be applied to the confines of capitalism. Whereas, I would say that the meaning, one of the meanings in my life is to build solidarity, and to try and connect people with the fight and build for a better future, the fight for justice. And this is not something that requires you to have a college education, or requires you to have, an above minimum wage job, or even a job. It doesn't require you to be able-bodied or whatever. And so I think that, like, this is kind of, which gets back to the original question, like, people who feel that they're losing their purpose have applied a purpose to their lives that is then tied to the confines of capitalism, to the machinations of capitalism. And when capitalism starts to fall apart, you're left looking down at like an empty pit, and you're like, well, what the fuck? What do I put in there? What do I?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And people end up with these kind of false purposes for a few reasons in our kind of current culture. One is the endless propaganda telling them that is the purpose. You every time you turn on a TV, every ad is telling you that these are the purposes of life. If you really get to the heart of it. And so they may end up seeking those things because they're just surrounded by it. They live within the mud that is this kind of false life goals. So that's part of it. Another is that humans, as you've talked about many times, humans are very adaptable. And so if we're put in this economic force position, this box that is incredibly difficult to escape out of for many people, then all the cognitive dissonance, rather than living every day saying I'm not living the purpose I would want to live in this life, we accept other things as that purpose. We accept that, getting enough money at the factory to get to the mall that weekend with maybe with the kids is the purpose in life. Now, taking care of your kids is if that's your purpose, that's fine. But the mall thing, the beyond that is really just a kind of facade. But now, like I said at the beginning, the America is not delivering on this promise of this kind of false freedom any longer.
Right. And of course, this is not to say that it's so easy and, why don't you just drop the whole capitalist paradigm? I mean, I think speaking for myself, I still struggle with this. I still, particularly as someone who spent time in the fashion industry and the music industry, I'll scroll through because, of course, these things are tailor-made for things I'm into. So I'll scroll past something that, like some clothes or something, like, ooh, that looks cool. And then I get to the website and I'm like, this is fucking stupid. What the fuck am I doing here? This is I know better, but it's so hard to continuously extract ourselves from the extremely deep programming. And of course, this is not about whether your parents did a good job or not. I mean, they can't stop you unless they literally raise you like fucking wolves. They can't stop you from ingesting. What is it that you talked about this years ago, Lee? What is it, 3,000 ads a day or something?
Yeah, they say you take in, the estimates are 1,000 to 3,000 ads and brand names a day, and every time I mention that number, people think, oh, not me. They mean other people,
Right.
because everyone pictures this kind of standard American that turns on the TV and actually sits attentively watching each commercial and going, oh, Coca-Cola is the way to obey my thirst. I was unaware. But that is not how almost anyone actually takes in these ads. Right. Most, you're doing something else. You're fast forwarding, you're changing the channel, you're doing, various things, but they're all still subtly influencing you. They're all still, like I said earlier, the mud in which we, try and operate our lives.
Yeah. And I think that the other part of this is that it's not, I think sometimes people will hear oh, the purpose of life or the meaning of life is to help others. And that sounds like some Mother Teresa, which is ironic because she was quite a character, not at all how she's portrayed.
Well, hold on. Can I just say one thing about Mother Teresa? It actually didn't surprise me when I found that out, because guess what? True saints, and I don't mean in the religious sense, but true people who act saintly, you never hear about them because
Right.
they don't promote themselves.
They're too busy
Mother
being
Teresa,
saints.
Mother Teresa apparently was a great promoter of herself, and so the actual people that are just quietly toiling every day helping people, you don't know their names.
Well, yeah, and that actually kind of, ties into the point that I was going to make, is that a lot, the purpose of life is kind of the way that, some people will talk about religion. I'm not saying that religion should be your purpose in life. It sure as shit isn't mine. But they'll talk about it oh, it's a personal thing. And I think that particularly in the age of, Instagram and Facebook and all of the other things that kids use these days that I don't know what they're called, you can feel pressed to make your purpose something that doesn't actually vibe with who you are. Oh, I'm going to make my purpose this thing because it's trendy or because it'll look good on Instagram. And this is a problem that happens a lot in activist circles and movement spaces, actually, this sort of performative radicalism, or this, this idea that like, oh, I'm going to act like that I have all the right politics, and I'm going to say all of the right things, but deep down, I don't actually believe it, and I don't know, I drive a Hummer or whatever the fuck, like that there's just that you can make it look like this is who you are, but then ironically, that's of course just adding another layer to this programming that capitalism thrives on. Like, oh, I'll sell you this revolutionary idea, this revolutionary perspective and portrait, but in reality, that's not who I am, and that's not who I'm going to be, and it just perpetuates this this facade and this fallacy.
Are you saying there's something wrong with my Che shirt I got at Target?
Dude, years ago, I remember when Target's first, it first started selling like a Metallica shirt, and me and my friends were like, "What the fuck? What? No, you're only supposed to buy a Metallica shirt either off of like, some creepy guy in an alleyway or at a concert. You shouldn't be able to buy it at fucking Target. Are you out of your mind?"
Yeah, I was so naive back in college that I remember. You remember Metallica? Well, I guess, and specifically Lars was the big force against Napster. Like, they were the main band that said like fuck Napster and everything. And all of us were like, "Man, Metallica really sold out on this one." And I'm like, what do you mean? Nowadays, I'm like, what do you mean sold out? They're a band. Their whole mission was to sell albums. That's not. They weren't like, fuck the man, steal our albums. Abby Hoffman was, but they weren't.
Yeah. No, it's... Oh.
They didn't have the steal our book on display. So I guess to wrap this up, the question is, are these really tough times? And I'm thinking about this like on a daily basis, because part of me wants to kind of see the silver lining in the fact that capitalism is that it doesn't know how to deal with this. It doesn't know how to deal with the pandemic where everything shuts down and all of a sudden we're not buying and we're not flying and so I have a hope or a slim hope maybe that this could be very positive and people start to see beyond our web that we've been surrounded by, but I hesitate to even have that hope, because I understand that people's lives in this moment is incredibly difficult. People are losing jobs, they're losing houses, apartments, their lives are getting turned upside down. Like, the number of, I'm sure we'll learn 5 years from now, the number of suicides connected to this is going to be catastrophic. So I guess the question is, do you think this could help create people, I don't know, a change in people where they actually reanalyze, break out of their cultural social engineering and reanalyze the way this world, this life works?
Yeah, and I mean, look, I'm not a psychologist, although I have been I act as kind of an amateur therapist in some movement spaces, just because I'm a Jewish mother and I like listening to people's problems and helping them. But I'm not sitting here being like, hey, what will fix your life is if you just find a purpose in life that isn't tied to capitalism. I'm not like...
Yeah, or like you lost your job and you're about to be evicted. Have you tried gardening?
Right.
It really... Right. It really makes things just so much better.
So, like, this is more, again, this is like a philosophical musing that, like, the way that I view philosophy is that you read it, you listen to it, and then you see if you're interested, you try applying it to your life. This isn't like, this is how you beat capitalism, or this is how you, become a millionaire or whatever. But it's just the idea that, like, these are questions that I've seen popping up. And so maybe folks listening have thought of the same thing, like, wow, I kind of feel like I'm lacking purpose, or I kind of feel like I'm fucking like a stray leaf in the wind or something. And just some ideas on like where that might come from, because I think, like, really humans are social beings that are obviously not via evolution programmed to give a flying fuck about profit. It's something that is really the antithesis of how human beings work. And I mean work as in like work in groups and things like that. So I think that just having these conversations and asking these questions can lead to those answers in your community that will lead to, like I like to say, not overthrowing the government, but making it obsolete, and getting to the point where we're talking more about like, oh, mutual aid, or hey, like what about, anarchist school spaces, where kids are learning in a homeschooling type fashion, but they have access to the same supplies as a regular school or whatever. Like just having these conversations that force us or that invite us to think outside of the box of capitalism. So that's really, that's the idea here. And so I think that these questions do lead to those type of answers, but the answers are of course going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, and I think we could spend the whole hour on this. In fact, I think we could spend books on this, which some people do. But I think within 20 minutes of what you can get done in 20 minutes, I think we came as close as anyone has to solving the meaning of life. So
well done.
Given those stipulations. So let's move on to the ongoing battle between police and secret police and agents of varying types, and their fight against protesters and Black Lives Matter. And really, although Trump is perhaps the most outwardly promoting, he does the most outward promotion of like a race war in the country. The Democrats are not like standing up for the protesters either. And let's talk about the latest update on that.
Yeah. So basically, Amazon, everyone's favorite monopoly. Amazon is...
They have to be everyone's favorite monopoly.
I know, right?
They're the only one.
You don't have a choice.
Do you prefer Amazon or Amazon?
What color Amazon do you like? So basically, Amazon is helping cops to spy on protesters. That's the little news tidbit there. Folks might be familiar, and if you have one, please remove it immediately. But folks might be familiar with the Ring doorbell system. It's basically like a camera that allows you to monitor like where your doorbell sits, like out, like the front of your door and stuff. But obviously, like it goes.
So the commercials the commercials show someone like not at their house, and they can see that a package was delivered and watch the person deliver it. Like that's the idea. Yeah, which, of course. It's kind of like the microchip commercials, if you've ever seen one of those. Like I saw one of those once, and it was like slow motion, like EMTs running up to a guy that was like, unconscious, lying in a pool of his own blood, and they were like, we need it, and it's like fucking, right. Days of Our Lives type shit. And then, some lovely voice comes on and it's like, well, lucky for him that they were able to scan his chip and find out what kind of blood type he was, and so he survived. Lucky for him, the government had implanted a microchip in his cranium when he was 4 years old. And they've been controlling his movements ever since. So we could easily help him in this time of need. Seriously, it's like, yeah, no, this isn't Orwellian at all. But this is another one of those, type things like, oh, you just get to see if a package was dropped off. You can't like spy on people or anything. Or how about the fact that, Amazon Ring has video sharing partnerships with more than 1,300 law enforcement agencies across the U.S., including none other than the LAPD, which is of course one of the largest police departments in the nation, and really quite fakaked when it comes to brutality. So basically, it came out that Amazon was making deals with these police departments and letting them use the video footage however they want. They basically just said, oh, we'd like to view out of this doorbell. Like they could just view anywhere. Basically, whole neighborhoods have bugged themselves. Yeah, and apparently, so again, I don't have one, but apparently there's like an app that goes with it called the Neighbors app,
which provides users with crime and safety alerts. I'm not fucking kidding. It should just be called the Karen app. I mean,
there is a black man in the neighborhood. A black man in the neighborhood.
Seriously, like it's just. So
it should be called the Karen app. Oh my god, and it's spelled like Carin. Like,
oh my god, that's perfect, Lee. So that's apparently what's being shared with the with more than 1,300 law enforcement agencies across the U.S. And on top of that, of course, the police departments also have access to drones. And other surveillance technologies include facial recognition, which is also currently used by more than 350 agencies. And by the way, studies have shown time and time again that facial recognition is really awful at recognizing black and brown faces.
So it just mistakes them for different people, which they can then arrest.
Exactly. So basically,
and Bernie Sanders and another lawmaker are putting forward a bill saying that facial recognition can't be collected or any biometric data can't be collected on you unless you consent to it, which of course the government and these lawmakers will never do, but at least it's good someone put forward that bill.
Yeah, and actually, with regards to this latest story, the EFF, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, launched a database last month that basically keeps tabs on the people keeping tabs. It's the largest ever repository of information on which law enforcement agencies are using what surveillance technologies. And they say that they focus on the most pervasive technologies, such as body-worn cameras, facial recognition, cell site simulators, automated license plate readers, predictive policing, camera registries, and gunshot detection. And they also pointed out, however, that this is just the tip of the iceberg. That the real extent of the broad and extreme surveillance that law enforcement agencies are doing is really largely unknown to us. And this is really just a tidbit, but it really just shows, I think it was Mussolini who said that fascism is a government and corporate alliance. That really just sums up this whole thing. Amazon Ring being used by the government to basically surveil and therefore harass protesters and folks exercising their human right to protest.
Because we're on the topic of dystopian surveillance of our every move and our bodies, I think maybe we should skip ahead to the fact that a private equity firm named Blackstone, which, again, one of those positive, not dystopian at all names.
Seriously.
Blackstone has bought Ancestry, which I think is the parent company of Ancestry.com, basically. Bought Ancestry and its trove of DNA for $4.7 billion. But Blackstone says they will not access people's data.
Yeah, and the police department said that they weren't going to watch you masturbating on your porch. They promised.
But isn't this amazing, this private equity firm buying up Ancestry? Because, when this first started, when the whole, hey, send us your DNA, when we started seeing ads, those of us who, are called the tinfoil hat wearers or whatever, were like, I think this is bad. I don't think we should send our DNA to those people because they might tell other people, like the government and stuff, about our DNA, and I don't think it's a good idea. And everyone's like, you're out of your mind. I'm found out I'm a quarter Polish.
I know. Well,
and here we are.
I know, and but this is just the idea again of like sending your fucking DNA to someone. That's shit. No, come on. Wasn't there like a Batman movie about this? I swear to God, like this is just so fucking creepy.
Just send us 3 of your eggs, and we'll
Right? No,
tell you.
It'll be fine.
We'll tell you what job you're suited for.
It's just, I mean, it's not at all surprising, but it's terrifying, and unfortunately, because a family member of mine was just so eager to find out, I'm now in that database, which please, people, stop. Just listen.
Well,
just listen to your parents if they tell you you're fucking Belgian and Swahili. Just fucking listen to them. Don't do the fucking ancestry thing.
I found out I'm 1% Cherokee, and now the government can control my every move.
Yeah.
Congrats. That sounds
was it really
wonderful.
Worth it?
Yeah. Was it worth it? And of course they're using this, and they've been this is classically how they get regular people to adopt larger surveillance, is they claim it's being used for some really positive thing. So there's been news stories about they finally caught the whatever Green Hornet killer or whatever, based on the DNA of his brother's sister once removed or whatever. But so they're like, well, we caught this serial murderer based on someone checking their DNA or whatever. But yeah, they're also going to use that against protesters, just like the people they're black bagging in Portland right now. This is not it's not only we promised to only use against serial killers. Yeah, no, they didn't say that, and that's not how that works.
Yeah, no, it's and look, this is not to say because I feel like every time we talk about something like this, we'll get an email or a tweet or something that's like, look, technology is the future, and it's like, well, yeah, technically technology is the past too. I mean, hello, the printing press, but I'm not shitting on technology, but to say that all technological advancements are good is like saying that bioweapons are good and drone bombing is good. The idea that technology can be used for good is, I absolutely agree. But look, a hammer is a tool. You can use it to beat someone to death, or you could use it to build a house. It's really how you use it. So I just don't see the positive. How could sending your DNA to a company to find out that you're 1% Cherokee, which doesn't fucking matter anyway, how could that possibly be used for good in this current, paradigm?
Right. And when you live in a society where the corporations have captured the government and most of the criminal justice system, you're just, you're playing with fire by giving them any data that you think is going to be, the use of is going to be restricted. In an ideal government, in an ideal society, you would get together and you'd have actual representatives who actually represent the people, and you'd say, here are the restrictions we want to put on these things. We understand that drone technology will not stop in its tracks just because it could be used for harm, but we are going to say, that drones should never be armed with anything, because if you arm a drone, then you're headed down a slippery slope that results in drones deciding on their own who to kill, which is not. I know that sounds ridiculous, but there's a whole long petition by former Nobel laureates and prize winners and Peace Prize winners saying that unmanned, unmanned armed aerial drones are an incredibly large threat to humanity. And so ideally you'd have a government that represents people that you could put restrictions on these things. But we know that these corporations have captured our government. They own the representatives. They own the system. And so acting like they're going to put restrictions on, your DNA use is just laughable.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I agreed.
So to summarize, if you right now, everybody stand up, go out to your Ring doorbell, pull out whatever genitalia you have, and show that to the Ring doorbell, and then smash the doorbell to pieces.
Agreed.
After that, go and rip up your Ancestry membership, and if you haven't yet sent in your DNA, do not.
I do wonder, like, if there's a way. I mean, I'm sure that like even if they said, yeah, no, we got rid of it, there's no way of ensuring it. But I wonder if there's a way that you could be like, hey, I'd like to, remove my DNA
yeah.
from this. But
I'm sure they claim there probably is.
I know.
But so maybe, yeah. So I mean, you never know if there is a way to. If they say that you can have your DNA removed from the database, you could at least try.
And final point on this, like, I get that we live in an age of, surveillance that, again, unless you live like out like fucking Robinson Crusoe, you're not going to escape all of it. And you have to, each of us has to make the choice, like, okay, what am I going to, what's the word in English? What personal space am I going to give up in order to have the ease of a cell phone or things like that? The cell phone always knowing where I am. So yeah, I totally get that, but it's like there are certain barriers that we should really be cognizant of because, when we're talking about like I mentioned, like the microchip or like literally sending people your fucking DNA, we should never just go with these with these new suggestions for amplifying the surveillance state and amplifying the amount of control and eyes that we have on us. So it's just an important thing to bring up.
Because pretty soon Skynet owns your DNA and you're fucked.
Wait, what was Skynet again?
That's the evil computer program in Terminator.
Oh, okay,
yeah. You want to talk about Tiana Arata?
Yes. So folks might have been seeing this on Twitter. You might have been seeing the hashtag Free Tiana. This is a story out of San Luis Obispo, California, which is majority. It's a hard word to say.
Like America, majority.
Oh my God, is that how I sound?
The majority of America.
Good Lord. Okay. So San Luis Obispo in California is very white. It's 70% white. Just FYI. And there have been some Black Lives Matter protests that have been happening in the San Luis Obispo area. And one such protest happened on July 21st, where demonstrators took over a portion of Highway 101, which is the highway that runs north to south in California, and blocked it. Stopped traffic for some time, and then after the protest, which is
a nice non-violent civil disobedience that gets attention and is a standard trick used by activists for generations.
Right, and it's happened quite a lot in places like LA, which, for those who don't know, LA is like, compared to San Luis Obispo, is 4,000 times the size. So, and I'm not saying that like blocking the highway in San Luis Obispo is not as meaningful. It is very meaningful, but the amount of traffic that you're stopping, realistically, compared to blocking a highway in, for instance, LA or New York or what have you, is far diminished. The amount of traffic.
Yeah. So if there's any BLM protesters in like some of the smaller towns in the far southwest of Virginia, and you block the one car in town from getting through, I mean, it's still noble, but it's a little awkward because it's like it's your grandpop or something.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, Bill, just wait 5 more minutes, okay?
Just listen. Yeah, no, I'm still coming by for drinks tomorrow. Can you just wait a minute? I'm trying to make a point.
But I think that, the scale is important because of what I'm about to say. So after the protest ended, Black Lives Matter organizers were loading up their cars to go back home, and San Luis Obispo PD arrested one particular, I don't know actually if they arrested, no, I think it was just her. She's a main organizer with the Black Lives Matter chapter in San Luis Obispo, Tiana Arata. She was arrested, and she was basically, She was charged and faces something like 15 years in prison because they claim that the DA, the district attorney, filed 8 charges against her, 5 of them which are felonies. So, and this is because apparently at some point during the protest, there were some violent people, not her, by the way, okay? There were some other assholes, and I will call them assholes because this was not cool what they did. They started wrecking a car that had been stopped on the highway where a 4-year-old was in the back seat, apparently. And, broke some glass that landed on the kid.
They were probably cops posing as protesters.
Right. So, and again, this is like, I have nothing against property destruction, but this is obviously going into like intimidating people who, are just there, which is not cool. So basically, the San Luis Obispo Police Department and the district attorney are saying that as an organizer, Tiana is responsible for these actions.
So they're trying that tact.
Right. So this is, this is like synonymous with like the bullshit of like riot boosting and stuff like that. That
which was shot down by the courts, wasn't it?
Right. But she was charged with, quote, participation in a riot. She was also charged with unlawful assembly. She was charged with conspiracy, which I don't know what that means. Conspiracy to do what? She was charged with unlawful imprisonment because I guess the people in the car were imprisoned. I don't know. And of course, well, the thing that's always used is she was also charged with resisting arrest.
This is classic. What they do is they throw 14 felonies at you, and then ultimately they go, listen, we'll take a plea deal where you just, take the misdemeanor of partaking in a riot or something like that. And then a lot of people understandably take that plea deal because they're facing 25 years in prison, and with the plea deal, they'll only get parole. Unfortunately, what that means is that, sets this precedent where they can arrest the leader of a peaceful action and then, force them to plead guilty to something.
Right. And apparently there's what happened during the arrest is that she was forced into a police car. She was not resisting. It's quite clear in the video. They basically kidnapped her. And at the same time, there are people, sharing videos and images from the protest where, you can see people standing together, and it seems really beautiful, actually. And I haven't seen any video or footage of the issue in question where some people, I won't call them protesters, but where some people were destroying this vehicle. But regardless, first of all, to say that the protest as a whole was a riot because this one fucked up thing happened is stupid and wrong. It's a fallacy. But also then to blame it on this woman, again, in a place that's 70% white. So a lot of the people there protesting that day were white, or are white. And she is a black organizer. And there is just such a clear cut. I mean, holy shit. It's like, every time you think, oh, that's what systemic racism looks like, they come up with one better. And here we are again with just the most, a perfectly glaring and grotesque example of systemic racism.
Well, and on top of that, this seems like it's a tactic it's being used in multiple cities. There was I don't know if they're still charging her or not, but there was another leader of a lot of the protests in New York was one of the people that was kind of black bagged, which after the Portland DHS agents were doing that, I guess NYPD thought, man, I didn't think of that. So they started doing the same thing where they were like grabbing people and throwing them in unmarked minivans, driving off. And anyway, they did that to one of the organizers. And this seems like many of these cities have decided that their best tactic to get these protests under control and to have everybody shut up and go back to your old white supremacist world is to grab organizers, both because they tend to, I mean, clearly by definition, they're the lead, they're helping lead these things, even if there are many. If you grab some of the biggest, best organizers at the top of these things, you make it very difficult to continue. You also then redirect the anger and fury and efforts of the top people involved in these things into getting their friend out or getting them freed or fighting the court case, etc. And so it has a much grander effect on the overall protests in that area to just take a couple of leaders, or even if they aren't leaders, even if they're just well-known activists, just grab them up and kind of make it about them rather than making it about rather than allowing the protest to continue to grow their own energy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there was one other point before we move on that I wanted to mention about this particular case. First of all, there's a petition that already has, I believe, let me just check real quick. As of the recording of this on Tuesday, August 11th, it has more than 200,000 signatures to basically release or undrop the charges. There are also on my Twitter, which is at Activist Eleanor, there's a tweet that I shared with how to get in touch with the San Luis Obispo Police Department and the DA's office. But I also wanted to just share something that was shared by activists, black activists as well, which is we have to recognize the power and the importance of, whether you want to call it allyship or accomplice-ship, or whatever that word would be. San Luis Obispo County, again, is 70% white. So this activist posted, "We can't do this without you, white folks." And I think that that's a really important point to recognize, that, like, I think a lot of times, white folks feel that, like, oh, we just have to show up and stand there. And yes, that's true, but there's a lot to do in between the protests. There was a recent tweet that I fucking loved because I so related to it. It was like, 98% of organizing is like spreadsheets and knocking on doors and having long conversations and some arguments, and it's like 2% yelling into a megaphone. Which is so true.
So when you get that moment on the megaphone, fucking use it wisely. All right, folks? Enough of the hemming and hawing. Be ready.
So to recognize that our job here in dismantling systemic racism is to be present in these moments, and to look to the black grassroots organizers who are putting out these calls and really working to liberate black folks in all senses of that word, and understanding just again how grotesque and perfect an example this is of systemic racism, that this black organizer is the one in jail when she had nothing to do with any sort of altercation that happened, and she is the organizer of a peaceful and beautiful protest. And so it's important to highlight that as well.
And I just retweeted that as well, so people can find the free Tiana tweet at also at Lee Camp, as well as at Activist Eleanor. Some quick notes before we get to our next topic. There won't be a live stream this week. We aren't doing a live stream this week, and we might not be able to do one until September because we are in different places, and it makes it incredibly difficult. But hopefully we'll be back with more live streams in September. But as you can tell, the podcast is running fine. Eleanor's other podcast is called Act Out. My other podcast is called Government Secrets with Graham Elwood. You can find those for free on any podcast networks or platforms. Eleanor's movie just got 2 more honor selections? What are they called? Official selections. Yes, official selections for film festivals. It's incredible how many honors this movie has already gotten. hardroadofhope.com is the website where you can view it right now. So go check it out. Please share it with friends. Also, my comedy special is free to watch. We're at around 96,000 views. I'd love to get over 100,000. So if you've already seen it, maybe you'll go and share it with a friend since it's free. LeeCampAmerican.com. Also, please keep this show going. We don't have any ads for anything except our own stuff. We aren't paid by anybody to do this podcast. You guys are literally the only ones funding it, and that's at patreon.com/commoncensored. And my book is, it's going to be 20% off either today or tomorrow. It'll start if you go to leecampbook.com and type in the coupon code BPAPL, the initials of the title. That'll get you 20% off the book. And all of Eleanor's stuff is at artkillingapathy.com. You can shoot us topics or ideas or thoughts at commoncensored@protonmail.com. If you've signed up at Patreon and you deserve a book or something, depending on which tier you signed up at, please email us because we need to get your address and everything. So that's commoncensored@protonmail.com. Email us and tell us what level you signed up at. And let's keep going, shall we?
Let's indeed.
We put in an update about the evictions. I mean, this is going to become the kind of like story of our time as the economy continues to get worse, is these evictions. It used to be that they were estimating 28 million evictions, which I assume means far more than 28 million people, because I guess many of these are families. And now they've increased it to 40 million. Is that right?
Yeah, so Market Watch put this out just yesterday, August 10th, which basically says that up to 40 million people are at risk of being kicked out of their homes. So again, as we've covered on this podcast, and you've covered this on your show, Lee, as well, the pandemic has really just highlighted the stark inequalities of our capitalist system and really kind of juiced them up, put them on steroids in a way. So basically there is, this was a report that was released by Friday by a group of housing researchers, and it aggregated existing research related to the housing crisis caused by coronavirus. And this is basically, it's shaping up to be the most severe housing crisis that this country has ever seen. And far worse than 2008. And this is, we're looking at people that are not getting any no eviction moratoriums. There's no canceling of rent. There's no rent ease. Anything like that. And on top of that, of course, people dealing with not being able to even feed themselves, much less pay rent. So this, yeah.
And so the one glimmer of light that I've seen in this is that some judges, it's coming down to the courts in a few places. I've read more than one. The article I'm looking at is about St. Louis, but I know there was somewhere else, maybe Virginia, but where judges are saying that are basically putting a freeze, halting on evictions because of coronavirus. They're not letting the banks go forward with these, and a judge in St. Louis has done that. And I think that people can stand up and fight back, and this seems to be one of the ways to drag this into the courts, to force a judge to make a decision on whether people should be thrown out on the streets in the middle of coronavirus. I know there was some video going viral recently of cops throwing out a family where the mother had coronavirus, like actively had it at that moment, and they were dumping their stuff on the street. I mean, this really is going to get horrific, and so I hope people stand up, and hopefully there's more court cases and more judges that realize that we live in a broken system. I mean, it's bordering on a failed state if it's not there already. And if the representatives and the lawmakers are so bought off that they can't see that there needs to be an eviction freeze, then maybe there's some judges out there that can actually find some small place in them where they see have any moral stance, and they will actually put a halt to these evictions. God forbid, a few judges should actually have, a spine and a sense of morality.
A moral compass.
Yeah.
But I mean, and the other thing, yes, I mean, obviously, like the courts are a tool and a tactic that are used by a lot of organizations and a lot of activists, but it's also important to appreciate and utilize the other tools that we have available to us. And of course, I'm thinking of anti-eviction, task forces, anti-eviction organizing, and how important that is for communities to come together and really support each other. Whether that be in DC, we've seen iterations like cancel rent organizing, and folks coming together to organize in their kind of like workplace organizing, but organizing in their home to bring neighbors together for a rent strike. So these kind of tactics also need to be utilized, and so I guarantee wherever you're at, if it's not already in play, then hey, you can help start it. But these are tactics and tools that should be utilized and looked at, as well as the courts.
Another tactic or tool that can be used to stop these evictions is if you lay micro machines inside the front door, and when the cops come in to evict you, they will fall comically on their backs.
So anybody under the age of, what do you want to say, 25 maybe, is not going to understand that reference. But for anyone older who has a special place in their hearts for little Macaulay Culkin.
Do you mean they won't remember Home Alone, or they won't remember Micro Machines?
Both. But mostly Home Alone, because, come on, that's classic.
This is how old we are. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. There was a meme going around that a Home Alone 1 came out closer to Vietnam than to today.
Oh, fuck.
And that was like 5 years ago.
Not okay, dude. Not okay.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, well, we have time for one more story here. What do you want to...
What do I want to cram in here?
Yeah.
Well, I think the Baltimore gas explosion is a good one, but I want to relate it to Lebanon real quick as well. So might take a couple minutes, but sure, let's do it.
So real quick, folks might have heard that this past weekend there was, or was it Monday? My days are, yes, it was. It was Monday morning. There was a major gas explosion which tore through a Baltimore neighborhood, which leveled several houses. It killed one person, and many people had to be rescued by firefighters and search and rescue teams, including children. So what happened? It was a gas explosion.
See, what had happened was, can't you just see like the government officials afterwards going, so that big explosion? What had happened was.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So basically, it was a gas explosion, and so far, I haven't looked this up in the past hour or so, but the last I checked, it was still the cause, quote, remains unknown. So natural gas is vis-a-vis fracking. So basically, for folks who aren't familiar, and I could go on about this for days. I'm not going to, but this shit is highly explosive. A few years ago, when I and some other folks were fighting the Mariner East 2 pipeline in Pennsylvania, basically there was a whole map drawn up of how far the blast zone was away from the pipeline itself, which is a pretty small fucking pipeline that carries this quote unquote natural gas. Which is a cocktail of chemicals, and basically, if there's a leak,
delish.
If there's a leak, first of all, you can't see it really, because it's not like oil where it just spills out in this toxic Ghostbusters looking goo. It's gas, and so basically, what happens is that there's a leak, and you might smell it or what have you, but then anything can be a spark. So you turning on a light switch, even a cell phone can be a spark. You turning on your car, anything like that can be a spark, and the blast radius can be miles miles away from the initial spill, which included, in the case of Mariner East 2, it included schools, it included, major thoroughfares through towns, it included, obviously, many people's homes, community libraries and shit. So the natural gas, the quote unquote, this lovely bridge fuel, is horrific, not just in the terms of how it's pollutive to the environment, in terms of polluting the air and the water and the land, but it fucking is it's like sticking dynamite into people's homes and being like, I don't know, it might go off. Let's see what happens. Well, this is what happens. This is what happens.
Right, and this is a failure of government, which we're seeing again and again, because when you have a government that is owned by big oil and gas, then they are not going to stop any of this stuff from happening. They're not going to insist that costly new infrastructure be put in. They're not going to effectively check the wells because, there's a million drilling sites across the nation and they've allotted 4 people to check all of them.
Right, and about that point, really quick, sorry to cut you off, but a lot of these companies are on the basically the honor system, police yourself, you let us know if there's a problem. Sure, these fucking companies that have literally perfected the art of fucking people over are going to tell you if there's a leak. Are you out of your fucking mind? Asking big oil and gas to be on the honor system is like asking a puppy dog to take a calculus exam. It's not just that they won't do a good job. They don't even understand what you're asking. Honor is not something in their vocabulary. So just real quick, I wanted to relate this to what happened in Lebanon. Obviously, a catastrophic explosion. I mean, if you look at the size of it on a map of Washington, D.C., it's basically all of D.C. If all of D.C. were somewhat impacted, that doesn't mean all of that's gone, but it means we're hit by the explosion. That's the size of this thing that went off in Beirut, and it was this ammonium nitrate, this very flammable, explosive chemical substance that had been, basically a ship couldn't afford to be offloaded at the port, and so they put it in storage. And so apparently for 4 years, various people at these ports, various officials had been contacting the government in Lebanon and saying, look, we don't have anything to do. We can't do anything with this stuff, but it's very explosive. We can't keep it here. And we could donate it to the military and maybe they could use it. We could donate it to farmers who can use it for farming, but it can't just sit in this storehouse. And for 4 years, the government did nothing. And here's the result, a massive explosion. And so I think that we're seeing something similar in Baltimore, obviously a much smaller scale, but in Baltimore and in Lebanon, this is government that doesn't give a fuck, that is completely unaccountable to the well-being of the people. And then you have catastrophic and a catastrophic ending to that type of failed government, of failed state. And we're seeing the same with coronavirus. This is a government that helping people get through something is completely opposite of everything that they understand and believe. There's nothing about Donald Trump or any of the people he puts in power, and really would be similar with the Democrats, that would make them want to stop everything to help people and save people. And so, to me, that's like the definition of a failed government. Absolutely, and I think you wrapped it up in a pretty grotesque but clean bow there, Lee.
It's like a bow made of turds. It's a grotesque bow.
Made of turds and faded dreams.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to head on over to patreon.com/commoncensored to do about 10 to 15 extra minutes. Please sign up over there, become a member. We can't thank the new members enough. We've had several people sign up recently, and you guys make this... you guys make this show possible. Eleanor's new film is at hardroadofhope.com. My comedy special is at leecampamerican.com. And my book is at leecampbook.com. And all of Eleanor's other stuff is at artkillingapathy.com.